Hello and welcome to Pots and Trowels with me, Martin, Jill and
Hello.
Sean.
Hi.
And later on we're going to be finding out all that happened at the East Markham Apple Day when Jill and I paid them a visit last week.
And we've got a listener's question on Geums to answer. And Martin's got some jobs or yard work you can be getting up to this week. And Jill's got a lovely recipe which is mouth-watering.
Delicious. But we'd also like to welcome on board Plant Grow, who are based in Norfolk in the UK. They've come on board as one of our supporters and they make organic natural fertilisers, mulches, compost and liquid feeds, all from plant material that is packed full of nutrients. And you can find out more about them on our show notes.
And we had a lovely visit to the Heritage Orchard in East Markham the other day. Had a lovely treat there and met lots of members of the garden club who help out with the orchard. And also Martin's going to be telling us a bit about the story of the Bramley apple and where it first originated from in Nottinghamshire. But you were chatting to Stuart first of all, weren't you, Martin, and asking him how he got into horticulture.
Well, I left school at 16. I came fruit picking here in the summer of '76 to help get some money when I went to college. And I went to Wisbech in Cambridgeshire for 2 years, studying the NCH. And I came back here to John Hempsall's to work full time.
Right, and back then, so that would be in the late 70s.
Late 70s, 78, 79.
John Hempsall's were large orchards in this part of Nottinghamshire.
Oh yeah, we had 90 acre of fruit, apples, pears, gooseberries, strawberries, blackcurrants, quite a lot of soft fruit as well, yeah.
Wow, that's a lot of fruit,
It
90
was.
acres.
90 acre, yeah.
And what happened to all that fruit? Where did it all go to?
Went mainly to the wholesale markets, Nottingham, Sheffield, Leicester, Birmingham.
Right, yeah. So you didn't do any pick your own in those days?
Oh, we did pick your own. We had one orchard we used to own for pick your own in September, October, and they came by the busload from Sheffield all over. It was ever so busy.
And when you were working here, I mean, did John start the business or was it his father's before?
I think John was the third generation.
Right.
But I think it was his dad and mainly John that got it into the commercial.
Right. So, because, I mean, years and years ago, they were big trees and you'll have seen a lot of changes with getting smaller trees.
Oh, yeah. Most of the trees are now on what we call M9, so they're easy to pick and easy to maintaining.
Mm.
There was some of the old big ones, but they just rotted off and dropped, so they weren't very good ones.
Because, I mean, Nottinghamshire is not a big orchard area, but of course the Bramley seedling is famous for Nottinghamshire. So what makes this area of East Markham, because you're quite elevated here, aren't you? What makes it so good for growing fruit?
I think it's just the soil. It's good soil around here and they seem to do well, and it was a challenge. They told John that he couldn't grow apples up here and he proved them wrong.
Right, okay. So,
yeah, they said he couldn't grow cocks as orange pippin up here, but we could.
Because they always say that, don't they? You can't grow them sort of in the north. I mean, I know we're not north here in Nottinghamshire, but it is still quite a cool climate.
Oh yeah, but it's good climate. We can grow them.
Yeah.
As long as you don't get the late frost, we're all right.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So how long were you here on the orchard, Stuart?
Probably about 20, because I was here for about 15 years and I left for 5 years and I came back again. So altogether about 20 years.
Right. And at the moment, though, you are a propagator on a nursery, aren't you?
I'm a propagator, for rhododendrons and azaleas at the moment, yeah.
So you just spend your life taking cuttings?
Just do cuttings, yeah.
So how many do you grow a year?
Well, cuttings, I do about 180,000 a year.
Wow.
Keeps me busy.
Yeah, it is, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I mean, have you always liked propagating?
Yeah, I always like seeds. So I grow a lot of seeds myself for showing, and I enjoy just growing plants.
Okay,
yeah.
Right, yeah. So where we are at the moment then, we're in the East Markham Heritage Orchard, which was set up by John Hempsall. Sadly, John passed away earlier this year.
February, yeah.
But tell us a little bit about the history of how this all came about.
Well, John was keen on apples. He could see the industry wasn't going too well, and he always wanted to get a heritage orchard. So the field we're in now, it came up for sale because it joined on our commercial orchard, and he bought it, and then we levelled it, squared it all up, and then we started planting, and the idea was to plant 2 trees of each variety that we could get hold of.
Okay, and how many varieties have you got?
Originally there was 300 in here,
yeah,
but I think unfortunately we've lost a lot. We're down to just 200 at the moment. But
still,
I'm replanting though.
That's still a lot,
yeah.
Yes. And now the orchard is looked after, not obviously John has, as we say, sadly died earlier this year, but you've sort of taken on the responsibility on behalf of the family, haven't you?
It's still owned by the family, but myself and the East Markham and Askham Gardeners Club maintain it.
Yeah.
So we look after it, do all the pruning, selling, spraying and everything. Yeah.
And it is sort of set out as a commercial orchard would be, isn't it? But like you say, only 2 of each variety.
Yeah.
So are you always on the source for new different apples? And...
Oh yeah, we're looking for old apples. Where if everybody's got anything in the orchard we don't know, if we can bring it, we'll try and identify it and propagate it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So how does that work then? If you've got 200 fruit trees at the minute, well, 200 varieties, that's 400 trees, and potentially there will be 600 if you get the 300.
Yeah.
So that must take quite a lot of looking after.
It takes a lot of pruning in the winter, yeah.
Yeah.
And spraying, because you have to keep them sprayed, because we do sell them for pick your own. Then what we don't sell for pick your own all goes for cider, so
Right.
we have to have a reasonable apple.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's looking good. I mean, here we are. It's first week in October now. I'm gonna. Do you know what this one is? We're standing next to.
Not off without looking at labels. I can't remember all 300.
Well, no, I don't blame you. This is a beautiful red apple we're looking at, and as we look up the orchard rows, we've got red ones and yellow ones and sort of orange stripy ones, big ones,
Yeah.
small ones. There is a whole selection of them. I mean, if you were having to plant 3 apples in your garden, what 3 would you go for?
Well, if you want a cooking apple, we obviously go for the Bramley. Then I like the John o' Gold and Cox's Orange Pippin as the main eating ones.
Now, John o' Gold is one that we used to get in the supermarkets. You don't see it as much now, but a lot of the ones that we see in the supermarket, like John o' Gold and Golden Delicious and Granny Smith, they always taste different when you grow them in your garden, don't they?
Oh, they do, yeah. We grow John o' Gold because it was a good commercial one, a nice juicy apple. That's why we went for it.
Yeah,
It's a Dutch variety.
right.
But the supermarkets now just don't stock English apples.
No. I mean, lots of English apple orchards are being grubbed out, aren't
Oh,
they?
they are, yeah. If you go down south, a lot of them's gone now.
Yeah. So I
Yeah.
suppose the great thing about the Heritage Orchard here is it's like a living museum,
It's just
isn't
music,
it?
yeah, so people can see what you could get years ago. Yeah.
And I think some of the old varieties that have been around for a couple of 100 years, or 100 years plus, are making a bit of a comeback for people in their gardens.
Yeah, people are asking for them now, yeah.
Yeah.
People come here, so can you graft or bud one of these trees for us? So
Yeah.
we will do that. If anybody wants anything, we can propagate them.
Yeah, well, it's good. Well, the sun's shining today. It's a bit blowy, so
Yeah.
it is a bit blowy. There's fewer blowing on the ground. So today is obviously come and have a look around the orchard. You've got I noticed in the apple shed you've got an amazing
There's
display.
200 varieties on show today.
Wow.
Yeah.
All from the orchard
All
here.
from the orchard, yeah.
And so people can come and do you do apple identifying as well?
I try my best. I've got some books.
Because John was always good at that, wasn't he,
Yeah.
John? And I remember being here with John, and he would look through the books, and
We'd
he
cut
would
them in half, and you can have a look inside and see how the core is, and each apple variety's
Yeah.
got a different core.
Yeah.
So he's got the book on that, so we can usually get most of them right.
Yeah, well, it's great that the orchard is carrying on. It's in safe hands with you and the garden club. I think you do probably most of the
I
pruning.
do most of all the pruning.
I will come and do some with you one day. Now we're not too far away, Stuart. You might have to give me a lesson. And
It's relaxing pruning. I
It is,
enjoy
isn't it?
Yeah,
Yeah.
just switch off and get on with it.
I know, but when you've got 600 trees to prune,
Yeah.
so how long does it take to prune one apple?
Well, one tree like this would probably take me 20 minutes.
Oh, it's a lot of 20 minutes then,
Yeah.
isn't it? Yes.
Once you get going, you soon
yeah.
get into the rhythm.
I mean,
of it.
what we ought to say is, the trees in here, because they're on a dwarf rootstock, they're all, you can prune them all from the ground. You don't
yeah,
need
that's
ladders.
the idea, keeping them
Yeah.
on the M9 so we don't have to climb ladders.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
okay.
So,
Good,
yeah.
right, well, I'm going to have a wander round. I might just pinch the odd one off the tree to do a
Yeah.
little bit of
Feel
tasting,
free.
of course. It's all for research, Stuart, this is.
Yeah.
And I'm going to go down and have a word with Betty and have a look what's happening in the village hall.
Yeah, okay, fine.
Great, lovely. Thank you, Stuart.
Thanks very much for coming.
Really fascinating to hear all about the apples and what's intrigued me is you mentioned there the rootstock and there was was it M9 was the code?
M9.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's that? What does that mean? What's that all about, Martin?
Well, put briefly, rootstocks determine the size
gets
of
quite
the tree.
complicated,
It is, yeah.
briefly.
If you grow a tree from seed, an apple tree from seed, it will get huge. So obviously commercial orchards don't want that anymore. So over the years, sort of over the last probably 100 years, they've been developing rootstocks that will determine the size of the tree. So essentially it's the vigour of the root. If it's a small root that you graft onto, you get a smaller tree. If it's a strong root that you graft onto, you get a bigger tree. So an M9 is classed as a dwarfing tree, and that's the one that's often used commercially now because it will produce a tree that is between 6 and 8 feet tall, or 1.8 to 4 metres tall, depending on your soil, of course. If you've got a very rich soil, it will grow a bit bigger. If you've got a poor soil, it will grow a bit less. So you can get very dwarfing ones, which is an M27, then you've got an M9, which is a dwarfing, a semi-dwarfing, which goes to about 12, 14 feet, which is an M26 or an M106. And then if you want a real big one, then it's an M25. So they're not in numerical order.
Does that go round London?
It does. It goes on forever. You can get held up in that one.
I was just thinking it was like paper sizes, and then if you got to 0, it was the biggest, but it's the other way around. Anyway.
They're not in numerical order, I'm afraid. So
who thought of that?
They were developed at the East Malling Research Station, which is a sort of a fruit growing research station that down south that's been on the go for years and years.
Right.
Well, there you go.
Coming up shortly, we're going to have, in the second half, I think we're going to have a recipe from Jill. But I just wanted to pick up as well about this idea of English apples not being in the supermarkets and fewer orchards and all this sort of stuff. I mean, surely we're kind of like aiming for sustainability and we want to reduce food miles. Then that's not the right way to go, is it?
Yeah, it's of a sad one, isn't it, really? Because we used to have some really good apple orchards in the UK, a lot down in the southeast, the west of the country, southwest, and dotted all around the country. Nottinghamshire had orchards as well. But of the last few years, orchards have been ripped out, commercial orchards, in favour of buying in from all around the world. We get apples in from everywhere, and I think it is a bit sad. I think the government really have not help the industry. I think that's what it boils down to. It's farming. They're not pushing agriculture, and we should be growing our own. It's better to grow your own in the UK than buy them in from New Zealand. Nothing wrong with New Zealand apples, but why bring them halfway around the world? And we've got the perfect climate in the UK for growing apples. So it needs a government and a big push to invest and get planting again.
But then it's not a quick job, is it?
It's not a quick job.
If they're starting from scratch, it's how many years until you get productive apples?
And it's an expensive job. To plant several acres of orchard is not cheap.
But then aren't there issues with finding people to pick fruit as well? I know there have been with soft fruit in the last couple of years. So.
Well, I know when we visited New Zealand in the past, they're still big apple growers, and they're now planting in a way to almost plant as a hedge. So they're planting a fruit hedge, vertical cordons, very close together, only maybe a couple of feet apart, and they will be pruned mechanically with machines that just trim them down the side. So there'll be a hedge maybe a metre wide. And I think they're developing technology that will have automatic apple pickers that will go along and pick them. So in the future, maybe it will come back. But yeah, it's getting people to pick apples.
Yeah, well, we can get automatic strawberry pickers almost. Are they up and running yet? I think we
were discussing those, weren't we? Yeah, the robotic, the agricultural robotics. There's all sorts of things like that in the works. It just becomes a question of what they put the technology focus into at places like Lincoln, where they do the agri-robotics. They've got in fact, I've got the mug here, Lincoln Agri-Robotics. Here you go. Just happens to be here. Not that I wouldn't. Because I've done some work with them. But it'll come from the need. So if somebody decides they need apple picking technology, then somebody will go and research that. So it's kind of like, is it the cart leading the horse leading the cart?
Chicken and egg.
Yeah.
Exactly, yeah. But, that doesn't stop us all growing an apple tree in our garden, because everybody has got room to grow an apple tree.
Well, or a fridge.
Or a fridge, yes. I've planted my fruit hedge, which I'm calling a fridge, 15 apples in a short run that will give us oodles of apples.
And year 2, we've had some apples.
We've had some apples,
nice
Next
ones.
year will be really good. We'll be in full production.
But then thinking about Nottinghamshire, of course, Nottinghamshire's famous apple is the Bramley, isn't it?
Absolutely,
now,
yes.
do you know a bit about the history of the Bramley apple?
Well, I do, yes. In fact, if you just hang on there, just keep talking about the Bramley apple.
Where's he going? Bramley apples. So is Bramley apple the one, and this Martin's probably going to fill me in with this, but is this the Isaac Newton apple? Is it famous for... Because of course,
I don't think so.
Because that's just over the border from here in Lincolnshire. Woolsthorpe Manor is where Isaac Newton came up with the theory of gravity, or I don't know if the word is discovered or hypothesised or what. I'm not sciencey enough to know that. But that is also a very famous apple from this area. There we go. What have we got here? Okay, Martin, what have we got here? You're back on headphones.
Yes, I'm back on headphones now, so I've no idea what you've been saying about me.
So just briefly, I was talking about Isaac Newton and the the gravity and the apple tree, that was just near here in Woolsthorpe Manor. Is that
Was
a
that a
Bramley?
Bramley?
Yeah, that was, no, it wasn't a Bramley. That was in Lincolnshire,
Yeah.
Nottinghamshire, Lincolnshire border, I think, isn't it? And that is now, they did identify the apple, and they've now, I think, renamed it as the Isaac Newton apple.
Okay.
So it is a veg, but it isn't a Bramley.
Anyway, back to Bramley.
Yeah.
This is a Bramley, famous Nottinghamshire apple.
So for people who are not watching the video, Martin is now pointing to big cooking apples at the screen.
Yeah.
So feel free
And
to
they
go
are-
to YouTube and check out the video if you're not watching it.
Absolutely, yes. And very often when you buy a Bramley in a supermarket, they're green because they pick them early. But if you allow them to mature on the tree till October, these are off our tree in the garden, you can see they get this lovely sort of pinky red flush on one side, on the sunny side of them.
Gorgeous.
And they are great keeping apples, very easy to identify. They're quite a flattish apple, and they've got these sort of ribs around the eye there. Where the
So the
flower
eye's
was.
the top where it was picked, and the ribs are kind of bumpy bits. You see,
That's right.
Yeah.
Yes. Well,
The
this little
eye
eye
is the
is where
bottom.
the flower was.
the bottom,
just
apologies.
there.
Yeah, all right.
And it's got these ribs, and also got them around where the stalk was here. So they're quite an easy one to identify. But the great thing about Bramley apples is they store particularly well. If you can keep them somewhere cold, or even in a fridge, just a few in the salad drawer of your fridge, they will keep right the way through until next March. So it's a really good staple diet in the winter for pies and all sorts of things, which you're going to talk about later.
So yeah, I am. I'm going to be using one in a recipe. But back to the original story of the Bramley apple and how it was discovered.
It was discovered in Southwell in Nottinghamshire in... Oh, you're putting me on the spot now. This is not rehearsed, by the way,
Ish.
anybody.
Doesn't matter the exact year.
1809. A young girl called Anne Brailsford put a pip in the ground. It grew into an apple tree, which turned out by chance to be the famous Bramley apple that we now know. And it was growing later in the garden. The house changed hands. It was growing in the garden of a man called Matthew Bramley. And Mr. Bramley was taking some of the apples through the town in a basket on his bike. And a local nurseryman, Merryweather's, famous apple growers and nurseryman, spotted the apples and said, "What are they?" And he said, "They're growing in my garden. They were planted by a young girl, blah, blah, blah." And Mr. Merryweather said, "Can I come and get some grafts off the apple tree and put them in our orchard?" And he said, "You can do that on the condition you name the apples after me." Hence the name Bramley's seedling. And they became world famous in the late 1800s, were planted all over the world, got lots of awards for being a brilliant apple, and to this day it's still probably, I think, the best cooking apple that you can get.
And am I right in thinking the original Bramley apple is still...
It is still alive in
Alive,
Southwell. Because it's obviously over 200 years old. There were big celebrations when it was 200 years old. It is dying. I think it's got various diseases, but they've taken lots of graft wood off it. In fact, there was the tree not the big tree in our garden that we inherited, but a smaller one we've got is a clone of the original apple tree in Southwell. So we've got a bit of history living with us.
Yeah. And there's a Bramley Apple Festival, isn't there?
There is a
coming
Bramley
up?
Apple Festival.
Just Googling.
Which is in a few weeks' time, Mrs.
I'll have a
Fish.
look.
Yeah,
See
so
when
there
it
you go.
Well, 200 years old is very old for an apple, isn't it? I mean, they normally, my experience of apple trees, not that I've had that many of them, is that they don't last very long before they get a bit weak and they kind of sometimes fall over.
Yeah, I think if they're maintained, you should get 100 years out of them, 80 to 100 years. So, you plant one now, Sean, you'll get many, many happy years of picking fruit out of it, and leave it for your children and grandchildren.
So the Bramley Apple Festival is in Southwell Minster, which is in Southwell in Nottinghamshire, on Saturday the 26th of October from 10 till 3:30. So there'll be lots of apples on display. I dare say there'll be lots of apple cake, jams and chutneys. I know that there's some cider producers going there who are local to Nottinghamshire as well. All sorts of things. Sausages as well, apparently.
Apple sausages. I think we should go along. I think we should go there.
It is in the diary, actually.
It is in the diary to go. Yes, we'll be there. We'll get a recording from somebody that knows about Bramleys.
Yes.
Fabulous. Well, we've got a question from one of our listeners. I don't know if we're going to leave that till a second half, or do you want to answer it?
We can
now?
do.
Yeah,
we'll do it now. Let's do the question,
All
then
right,
we can get
so-
back to the orchard.
Okay, we had a question from Alison Roger, and I think Alison's in Derbyshire. Good afternoon to the team. As always, enjoying the podcast and the great advice. Geums. I love them, but never sure when and where to cut them back once a flower appears. Do I cut above the spent flower or leave it as a new flower develops further up? This means there's a bit of a messy deadhead left below. Hopefully you can solve my conundrum. Kind regards, Alison.
Right, yeah, well, geums are lovely, little perennial. They flower mainly springtime, sort of April, May. They're not long flowering. They're not like some perennials that you can keep deadheading and they'll go on and on and on through the summer. They do have a definite flowering period of just a couple of months. What we tend to do is we actually, because on the flower stalk there'll be several heads. When they've gone, we take that stalk out completely. So if you just pinch off the individual flowers, it doesn't really do any good. It doesn't benefit them. So just take the flower stalk off when it's finished. You may get another, but as I say, they're not a long flowering plant anyway. So just enjoy them for that short time in late spring and early summer.
Okay. Well, remember, if you've got a question for Martin or the team, drop us an email, info@pots&trowels.com, or put a comment on one of our videos, or as Alison did, drop us a Facebook messenger, and we'll attempt to try and keep across those, because there are so many communications methods, it can sometimes be a little while before we spot everything. But yeah, I think maybe are we going to go and hear a bit more from the Apple people?
Yeah, let's go there.
Yeah.
Well, surprise, surprise. Look, I found Mrs. Fish lurking in an apple tree.
Hello, I'm very tempted to get a bag because they're selling apples here. You can come and pick your own. So it's only £2 a kilo.
That's good value,
it is
isn't
good.
it?
And
you
I
can't
think,
get fresher than this.
Can you just ident this tree? Because I think this is the Mark and Pippin. We've got one at home, haven't we?
We have, yes.
Which is a gorgeous apple.
It is. Well, we're in East Markham in Nottinghamshire, and this is one that John Hempsell, who we've been chatting about earlier, bred many years ago. It's never been officially registered, and I think the plan is now to register it in his memory. But it's a lovely, lovely red eating apple, really sweet and juicy. Good keeper as well.
So we've not had many off ours because it's quite a young tree.
It's a young tree. It's one we grafted from our old tree, which originally came from John. And it juice as well.
It does, yeah. But it's like being in a sweetie shop, isn't it, with pick and mix, because you can go round the orchard and just pick however many you want, and you end up with a much bigger bag than you thought you were going to.
Exactly, until you come to put them on the scales. And this is the bit where
this is the weighing
done.
station.
Look, and the lady...
Hello!
I know. So, Betty, you're in charge. Well, not just you. You've got Matt and Alison with you, because you're all members of the garden club. Come a bit closer to me. So, come closer, Betty. Don't be shy. Come on in. So you're all on the committee.
Yeah.
So let's come closer and have a committee meeting with me. So we're standing in front of your Salter scales here. So what happens? People wander off into the orchard and just pick them, do they?
Yes, they can either bring their own bag, or we can supply a plastic bag at the moment, and go and pick whatever they want. There's a map available that Matt here has redrawn.
Well, we found that people were struggling with the old guidebook that they produced. So we thought that we'd try and make people's lives a little bit easier and produce a map with each of the locations of the trees.
Good idea, isn't it? Yeah, because otherwise, because some of them look very similar to each other, don't they? That's the problem.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, one red apple looks like another, but these are all different. So, Betty, you've been a member of the gardening club for a long time, haven't you?
Too long.
No, it's never too long, is it? Never too long.
Yeah.
So, we go back a long way. I mean, I've got to be careful what I say because Jill's listening.
Yes, I'm a long-standing member now.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm an honorary member.
Good.
An honorary
absolutely
member.
Right.
Yes.
And I think this is great because, all these people can come and pick. We've been watching them. There's a bit of a lull at the moment, but there's a lady staggering around there with some big bags full. She'll be heading this way in a minute. And it's just nice that you can get all these lovely old varieties, isn't it?
Absolutely wonderful. And then when you see the children coming in, that's the most enjoyable thing, when they come out and they're chewing an apple, bless them as little as they are. It's lovely. And there's so much space in there for them to go and enjoy themselves, pick an apple up, be really happy, and it's lovely to see. I really do enjoy it.
By the end of today, are you fed up of apples? You're not going to, do you go home and make an apple pie?
By the time as next Saturday comes and you have to bend down and pick all those that have fallen because somebody wants to come and make cider, we might be fed up next Saturday afternoon, yes.
Right, so people pick their own today, but then there's a lot on the floor and going to be a lot on the tree. Yeah. So who picks them all?
We do.
Yes.
all the members, anyone that we can get to come along.
Any volunteers that we can get to come along. So yes.
So how many do you think you're likely to pick? Because there's a lot of apples there.
5 ton.
5 ton?
5 ton.
I think that's what we've been requested, isn't it? So it'll be as near as we can get to that, and probably even more.
So where's the cider maker? Is he local?
No.
I'm not sure. There's, I think there are 3, aren't there? Is there one from Boston Way, I think?
Yes. Right.
Yeah. So, and it's just whoever's interested and who's sort of prepared
to buy them off us. That's the thing.
Absolutely.
So that they don't stand around. We want somebody to use them. Somebody make use of them.
That's
please.
what they're grown for, to eat, aren't they? Or
Absolutely,
drink in this
and make
case.
cider of
Yes.
them. Yes.
And then do you all get involved in the pruning? Because Stuart was telling me about the pruning. I think he's trying to get me to bring me secateurs.
Would he want me pruning? I don't think so, Martin.
What about you then, Matt? You can prune. You don't need a ladder. You're tall.
I'd be more than happy to help out, but I mean, obviously I work, so it's trying to find the time.
I know
so
it is, isn't it?
I know Stuart does most of the work here on his own.
Yeah.
So,
well, he loves it. Though,
he does love
he?
it, yeah. And I mean, I can't blame him.
And I work as well, so I'm not always
all
available.
the excuses are coming out now, aren't they? Yes. Oh well, it is brilliant, and I hope you sell lots and lots of apples to keep this brilliant facility and orchard, this heritage orchard, going.
And is there any apple cake up in the hall?
Lots.
Oh, right. Well, we
Recipe
need to.
books.
Right.
Recipe
Oh,
books.
good.
Yes. There's always a recipe
Very
book.
long though.
No, well, we need to head up there then next.
Yes, I think cup of tea, bit of apple cake.
An apple tasting table.
Oh wow!
An
There
apple
was a
tasting
lady
table.
came in specifically yesterday for some cookers for an apple cake that's going to be on in to eat in the
right.
hall. So I get up there. Yeah.
Go, right.
Perfect. We're off.
Right.
Right.
See you, Betty.
All right,
Nice to
thank
see you
you very
again.
much.
Oh,
Take
there's somebody
care.
come to get some apples, Wade.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's another
All right.
customer. Take care.
Ta-da.
Come on then, did you get some apple cake? Come on, you know I'm wondering.
Lots.
Oh, we did. But they had produced an apple recipe book, and they had made. I mean, I say they. I'm assuming there's a committee and lots of willing volunteers. But they had made every recipe in that recipe book for you to taste. So they've got all the cakes. I don't know how many. There must have been 30 or so. Even soups they'd got as well to taste.
Apple
They'd
soup?
cut them. Yeah. Well, I think it was like parsnip and apple. That kind of mixture. And so we just went along the road. We didn't taste all of them. I have to say we kind of picked, didn't we?
There was too many to eat.
There
them
were
all.
too many, yeah. So they did a fantastic job there. But then, of course, there was a little coffee and tea area with some bigger pieces of cake. So I had an apple and lemon cake, which was lovely. So there were pieces of apple in a lemony sponge and then a gorgeous lemon icing on the top. What did you have?
I can't remember.
You had a gluten-free version.
I did. I tried a gluten-free. It's like an apple
I think
sponge.
it was probably a bit cinnamon and
Yeah, it was
spices
delicious.
and
Absolutely
those sort of
delicious.
autumn
So,
spices
yes,
that go with
it's a lovely event. It's organised by the Village Garden Club there. I think that it's technically, is it the East Markham and Askham, is it?
Yes.
A garden club that organise it, that Stuart is the chair of, and they've been doing it for a number of years. Really is good. And if anybody wants to go next year, if you're in the Nottinghamshire area, it's always the first Sunday of October, and it starts at 10 and runs through the day. And there's lots of things to do.
It's the Morris
You can
dancers
spend-
and
you can spend
steam engines.
hours there.
And, yeah, no, it's
Super.
a nice time out, isn't it? But we couldn't have apple cake and not talk about an apple recipe,
Let's
could
do
we?
it. Let's do it.
So this is a lovely one that I like to do. It's not a cake, it's a pie. Now, everybody cooks an apple pie. You've all got your own individual ways of doing it. And this is just one that I like to do. It's a bit of a treat. And it's got a few extra bits of butter and sugar in it here and there. But, we're worth it, aren't we? So I do make quite a rich buttery pastry. And then I just slice up some Bramley apples, fairly chunky pieces, because I'm going to cook them a little bit first. So just in some butter and a bit more sugar in a pan. Just cook them till they're starting to get tender. And then line your pie dish with your pastry. This particular pastry is quite crumbly, but if you're just using an ordinary short crust, then that's fine. Just do it as normal. Pop your apples in, and then, this is the magic bit, get some toffee. So am I allowed to advertise on here? Because I have tried this recipe.
We can do whatever we want. We're not the BBC. We,
Yeah.
never
No,
know.
that's true.
This place might send you a free bag of whatever it is.
Yeah,
So.
that's okay. Right, well, Thornton's special toffee.
What was that?
Thornton's special toffee. This is definitely, I've tried all of them. I've tried Werther's, ordinary shop-bought ones, Tesco's own brand, all of them. This one definitely works the best. So just chop that up, break it up into lots of little pieces, put it in a freezer bag and bash it with a rolling pin. So if I'm feeling a bit tetchy with Martin, this is quite a good one to do, and I can bash this rolling pin with all the toffee. Scatter all those bits of toffee on top of the apple, which is now in your pastry lined dish. Pop the lid on, the pastry lid, and then pop it in the oven. Let it cook until the pastry is nice and cooked. The apples will be really tender, but magically the toffee just melts over the top of the apples, melts down. It gives it this gorgeous toffee sauce inside the apple, and it just works really well, doesn't it? It is one of your favourites, isn't it?
It's delicious.
But of course, it's coming up to bonfire night, Halloween. So if you use Thornton's treacle toffee, then that works really well because it's got that extra treacly taste. So it's a little bit
delicious.
more,
A bit of ice cream, custard cream on there.
Just if there are people around the world listening to this, then Thornton's is based in Derbyshire, so it's nearby to Nottinghamshire. And I don't know if they export around the world, but there might be like some in
There
some
may
kind of
be,
special
but there'll be
shop.
another.
Yeah.
There'll be your local alternative. It's delicious. It really is. It's one of my favourite winter puddings.
And then just very, very quickly, I've just got another little quick one. For a really nice high protein kick sandwich, you just get some granary bread, spread it with some peanut butter, and then some thin slices of an eating apple on the top, and then put your top layer of sandwich on. And that's a really nice snack, good lunchtime snack, but a bit of high protein in there because of the peanut butter, and you've got the apple. But the peanut butter and the apple work really well together.
There you go.
Top tip.
Marvellous.
Quick reminder, if you've got a question for Martin or the team, drop us an email, info@potsandtrowels.com. But I think, Martin, you've got some tips for us. What should we be up to? What are the, jobs for the garden or yard work for the week?
A few things that you can be doing outside at the moment. If you've got a pond or a water feature, now is a really good time to clear it out, because people often say, when do I clean my pond out? It needs a bit of a fettling, a bit of a sort out. And a lot of the time you've got amphibians and wildlife that are active, but this is probably the least active time. You don't want to be doing it in the spring when they're spawning and all that type of thing. So if you've got pond plants that are getting a little bit overgrown, a little bit vigorous, now's the time to do that little bit of thinning. If you disturb the water, it's not too much of a problem because it will just settle down. So any maintenance that you've got to do, I would do it sort of in the next few weeks, as we're into autumn. And if you've got just a water feature, it's a good time to one of these self-contained ones, just give it a good clean out, because sometimes the water's a bit grimy, leaves fall to the bottom. Over the summer it gets a bit sludgy, so give it a good freshen out, ready for the spring. Fill it with water, because the birds will drink out of it all the way through the winter anyway. So water and pond features you can do now. If you want to do a few winter salads and you've got some part packets of seeds. I was going through my seed box the other day, and I've got quite a few half packets of all sorts of things, lettuce and various salad leaves and mazuma and mustard and rocket, even things like beetroot that we don't want to grow for the root. We can grow it just for the stalks and the leaves on there. Mix them together, get some pots or trays of growing compost, just sprinkle it thinly over the top, cover it with a thin layer of compost. If you've got a cold greenhouse, that will be perfect. Or even on a windowsill in the house, you've got a cool windowsill that's nice and bright. Put it on there, keep it moist, and they will sprout very quickly. And when they're literally just a couple of inches tall, you can just get your scissors, snip them off and put them in sandwiches or have them as a side salad. Just have a little bit of something fresh all the way through the winter. And finally, again, autumn, bit of a time to do a bit of a clear up in the garden. I know we leave lots of plants now to stand because of their seed and dead flower heads on there, good for wildlife. But if you're sort of doing a bit of work in the borders, getting rid of any weeds that are there and a bit of clearing, it's a perfect time to add a mulch to your garden. And a mulch will do various things. It will greatly improve your soil, so it will, all the goodness in that mulch can go down into the soil. It encourages, microorganisms in the soil, the worms. It protects the soil and just builds up the fertility. So now is the perfect time to do it. And if you've got your homemade compost, that is great. But of course, you can buy compost as well. Lots of it is available. And Plant Grow, who are working with us at the moment, doing a fantastic mulch and soil conditioner. So if you are, in the UK, you can get that in bulk bags. And I do believe they're giving us a discount code for any listeners of Pots and Trowels, which I think Sean will pop into our notes.
Absolutely. Yeah, good stuff. And good news, we've got someone from Plant Grow coming on next week, hopefully.
Yeah, Daniel's going to pop along and have a chat about the process. It's a fascinating story of how they got into it and the product that they make. It's so eco-friendly, sustainable and low carbon footprint. It's an interesting story.
We need to go with the video, don't we?
We do.
Do a Pots and Trowels video from there. That would be
good.
really interesting.
Yeah, it would. Yeah.
Good stuff. All right, well, I think that's about all we have time for this week, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, we'll be back again next week and with lots more to do in the garden. So we'll see you then.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Watch the videos on YouTube or Facebook, follow us on Instagram, Twitter or X, and subscribe to the podcast and never miss a thing. For more information, go to potsandtrowels.com.